I am the thorax, and I speak for the bees, as well as for any other bug-like creature that be prejudiced against by the fools that we are. Your Honor, I know I may not have passed the bar, but please, I assure you, my friends are not guilty. When comparing us to them, we're the ones who are filthy.
Alright, that's enough of that. Hello everyone, my name is Bugsy Corleone, also known as Saul Bugman. Today, I'm going to be finishing up a case that I've been working on for quite a while. It was supposed to be done a little while ago, which is a little bit why my law firm is looking a bit drab right now. I don't necessarily have enough to afford fancy backgrounds or really put anything up on the wall. However, you know, might as well just finish up while I still have it. Excuse me for a moment. Brief change of location. Alright folks, so unfortunately due to financial mishap, the lease on my current property that I'm using for the law firm is contested. So for the moment we are going to be residing in my wonderful, lovely office space in my home, and this is going to be background for the rest of the seriousness, outside of my whole character thing, my apartment's a mess because I've been sick and miserable, and this is the one day that I look good and decent on camera, so I'm trying to finish up this video in one day with one recording with barely any prep work. So might as well get to it. Now, in case the title didn't make it clear enough, the entire point of today's video is me pretending like I'm in a court case kind of thing where I am defending all the bugs in all of the world because most people don't like them, and I like them, and I want people to like them more, or at least learn to understand them more. So I'm going to be talking about misconceptions, ways that these animals are beneficial to us, and why you should not be prejudiced towards the arthropod variety of animals.
Defending bugs in court with Bugsy Corleone, except not really.
Alright, well first we're going to do a rapid fire round, common bugs that people hate for whatever reason or another that, everybody defends. First up, spiders. Love them or hate them, you probably have at least 100 of them in your home and your walls where you can't even see them, not bothering you because they're actually busy eating all the parasites and bugs that can actually kill you. That, and they've also contributed a lot to science.
Mostly in terms of material science, but also contributing to our understanding of intelligence in smaller animals.
And finally, no spiders, no Spider-Man. Secondly, moths and butterflies. If you're scared of them, that's just genuinely a skill issue. They're some of the most beautiful and passive animals on the entire planet. Not to mention, they're pollinators, essential for certain types of plants to survive. They're embedded in the ecosystem. Without them, half of the planet would die, yada yada yada. Thirdly, bees. Pollinators, friendly, social, make good pets, make half of our food, allow us to eat it all, allow basically every animal to eat. The literal foundation of
human civilization and agriculture, our medicine, and a lot of our knowledge on structural integrity.
Also, if you're telling me a bee isn't cute, you either never seen one or you're just lying. Fourth, ants. Similar to bees, they're also the foundation of several types of ecosystems, especially in the tropics. You literally can't escape them. They are everywhere. If you think it's annoying how they conquer and plunder and pillage all of our kitchens and constantly attack you for daring to try and push them off of your own land, maybe you should look in the mirror and question, how much has humanity done that?
Obviously, that's more of a joke, but it is pretty insane how much similarities we have to ants despite being completely different creatures.
Now, I could go on and on and on about every type of bug species, about how crickets, katydids, grasshoppers are good for desert grasslands, and how those annoying grubs that get in your lawn that destroy everything are actually very good food sources for any types of reptile friends you might have in your house. But, see, there's a lot of bug species. There are literally millions of species out there, half of which at least are beetles, and we're still discovering new ones every single day. There are just that many, so I'm not going to go through literally every one of them. In fact, can you guess what percentage of our planet right now is composed of only arthropods?
In terms of biomass, not species.
96%.
For reference, we only take up 0.01%, and there's 8 billion of us.
We are the speck of dust in between my fingers right now, and the bugs are this. So, instead of trying to accomplish a quite literally impossible feat, we are going to be focusing on the 4 most hated species according to Google Analytics. That is, roaches at number 1, mosquitoes at number 2, wasps at number 3, and ticks at number 4. If you want me to defend any other crazy little wild critters, let me know in the comments. I will gladly do so.
Let's call the first defendant to the stand, roaches, aka superfamily Blattodea.
Roaches, roaches, roaches. They are everywhere. Almost every single corner of this entire planet has to deal with them in one way, shape, or form.
What if, perhaps, I were able to convince you that this issue was brought upon ourselves?
See, funny thing about the vast majority of the species of roaches, the vast majority are nowhere near us and want nothing to do with us and really find no benefit in being in our homes. In fact, there are some that are so specialized in their environments, we cannot care for them. We have to basically put them in a pressure containment suit equivalent types of environment, or they will literally die immediately. However,
the most common species that we see are indeed problematic, and while they aren't the representative for literally all cockroach species, it's definitely understandable why people don't like them.
And as is the case with most of our modern day problems, all of this stemmed from the mistakes of someone from way back in the day.
Alright, so I'm going to simplify this next part as much as I can. The original recording was very long-winded and overly convoluted for people who aren't a hyper nerd like me, so let's start from the top. It's 1492. Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, race in the New World, blah blah blah. It's the age of exploration where the most prestigious position in society is becoming a colonist and venturing around the world. Only if you're a European great power, everybody else need not apply. Excuse me. Anyway, cockroaches live in the wild, living off of detritus and dead wood, following climate patterns of moisture to find easy food, as well as potential partners to mate with. You know what has all of that and more? Human trading vessels. Because for every speck of food available in the wild next to a bunch of predators, human ships have that times 10 times 20 encased in even more food surrounded by moisture. That and the humans on board were usually clueless to if there was ever an infestation until it was far too late. Add up those infestations over hundreds of years, over thousands of miles, and bada bing bada boom, you've got an invasive roach problem over the entire planet.
To make a modern day analogy, that's like us today, where most of us in America, at least, are having to live with our parents and work several jobs and can't even afford payment or food or basically anything else. Because everybody's so confident the economy is down, everybody's fearing each other and you have to pay for a bunch of things that you realistically shouldn't have to, because everything costs a arm and a leg. If you have other arms and legs, you have to sell everyone else just to get by. Now imagine going from that and keeping your current salary and everything you have going on, but suddenly the economy resets to how it was 50 years ago. Suddenly everything's looking a lot brighter. In short, we can't really blame the roaches for taking advantage of their essential Nepo baby position. I mean, we're so entitled as animals, we literally leave food in rooms called pantries, just open for whenever we like it. And we have crumbs all over the floor because we don't want to vacuum tonight. Now, I think it's pretty fair to say, don't like roaches on my skin, don't like roaches in my food, don't like roaches on my clothes, don't like roaches really anywhere near me because I prefer to not have roaches on literally everything. If they're gonna be somewhere, they're gonna be in there being eaten by my little boy right there.
But ultimately, you can't really blame an animal just following its instincts trying to survive by taking advantage of our laziness. In any survival situation, we would do the exact same. But if you have a real issue with them, just clean, man. Now calling the second defendant to the stand. Mosquitoes.
Alright, it's mosquito time. Time to take out the board. Alright, let's start with some basic math. So, less than 50% of all mosquito species are even carnivorous or able to feed on blood in the first place. Currently, we have 6% of species that are able to feed on humans. Of those, only the females can. Literally every single male mosquito is unable to feed on blood whatsoever. They are only able to feed on things like nectars and sugar. So, take that down to roughly 3%, 4%, depending on the time of year, because females tend to live longer. And on top of that, the vast majority of those females will probably substitute not eating a human for something else that's already out in the open, not even defending itself. So let's just take that down to about 0.5%. Now, it's virtually impossible to get a 100% accurate percentage rating when it comes to something like this. That being said, estimations say all of the bites are only from 0.5% of all mosquitoes that have ever existed. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, if only 0.5% of the population is the problem, why is it so widespread amongst humanity that we all hate mosquitoes? Let's count how many there are. There's about 1, followed by 3 zeros, 1,000, followed by another 3 zeros, 1,000,000, another 3 zeros, 1,000,000,000, another 3 zeros, trillion, but we're not even done yet. 1 quadrillion mosquitoes are alive at any given point, at any given time, all over the planet. Based on the studies and estimations and surveys that I read from all of the scientific community, that means at any given time there are roughly 5 trillion to 20 trillion mosquitoes trying to feed on humans at any given time. Good lord.
For perspective, that's roughly 625 to 2,500 mosquitoes per person.
Oh, then why don't we just try to genetically modify the mosquitoes that do want to feed on humans into not feeding on us anymore?
Or at the very least, influencing their genome to where they can no longer harbor diseases for us. Surely that is a safer option, if nothing less.
Each time we have tried, we have only made hybrid mosquitoes that are not only more disease-ridden, but also bigger, stronger, live longer, and feed on humans more than they did before.
And while humanity has had successes in genetically modifying insects, like with the screwworm outbreak in Central America, mosquitoes have proven to be more intelligent and resilient than we originally estimated. And seemingly no matter what strategy we try, they figure out how to outmaneuver it and then reincorporate it to make themselves even stronger.
However, that being said, mosquitoes are also incredibly essential to the environment. The vast majority of them are very good pollinators. And I'm talking like 25% of all species. Fun fact, there's actually an entire genus of mosquitoes focused on only parasitizing other mosquitoes. They're actually pretty big. They're usually referred to as elephant mosquitoes. I really like them. They're really nice. In short, it's been shown time and time again, no matter how many times we try this whole charade, all we end up doing is creating either a big hybrid species that becomes more of a bane of our existence than the mosquitoes already were, or even affecting the population of other mosquito species that are beneficial to the environment and causing more deforestation. Any way you go about it, you can't touch them really, you can't push them away. All you can do is wear bug spray and try to get them away from your property the best that you can and hope that you don't get bit, and if you do get bit, hope that you don't get a virus. They are not going anywhere, and every time we try to push them away, they get stronger. Seriously, it's scary. They are mounting in numbers. They're going to kill.
Calling the third defendant to the stand. Wasps, specifically Vespoidea and that family.
It's time we talk about the wasps. First off, let's do a little bit of math. I'm not going to go through all of it like I did for the mosquitoes, but in short, 92% of all wasp species are actually ones that don't interact with us basically at all. The majority of wasp species are actually parasites or parasitoids or hyperparasitoids. Basically, it's a big, old, long, complicated chain of very highly specific targeting. Don't ask any more questions. Don't. For your own sanity. Fun fact, the vast majority of wasp species can't even be seen by the naked eye. Did you know that? I know that you didn't because you don't do any research. You're watching a YouTube video. Anyway, there's quadrillions of wasps, quadrillions out of the 8%, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of wasps. We have to deal with them. Paper wasps, which are the ones that we run into, are very, very intelligent. There's still studies being done and we can't quantify their intelligence precisely, but they are at least on the same level as ants and bees, if not more so. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not annoying to deal with them. I'm not going to sit here and say they're completely 100% innocent. But I would like you to consider for a second, maybe it doesn't have to be that way.
So originally I made a whole segment based on wasps and their behavior towards us and the ones that we see in papers and studies. However, the closest thing I can see to physically represent that on the screen is this chart right here, which, unless you're very familiar with wasps, you won't even know half of what it's talking about. So it's time for another oversimplification sequence. So first off, paper wasps are hard to identify between each other because they usually look fairly similar, and even within their own species, there are differences that make them look like other species. Also, despite resources online saying otherwise, paper wasps refer to any form of wasp that makes a paper nest. The mix-up happens because of a lot of different colloquial names for different species that get constantly misidentified even by people who are supposed to know what they're talking about, like pest control. So just to avoid any confusion, when I say paper wasp, I mean vespids. All yellow jackets are paper wasps and not all paper wasps are yellow jackets, blah 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 blah. I'm bringing all of this up because in general paper wasps display the same behavioral tendencies. And like with most animals, if you learn about them, then you'll have less issues with them. So first, let's start with hovering, the most basic behavior. Hovering is usually just them being curious and trying to figure out what you're doing, what you are, and whether or not you're a threat. Their eyesight is fairly poor, so they usually hang around for a while and they get very, very close, which some people might see as aggressive, but in reality, they're just trying to make sure you're friendly. Now, sometimes they will land on you, and I understand that can be scary, but generally when they do that, it's because they don't see you as a threat. And as long as you stay calm, they're not really going to do much other than using you as a perch. Generally speaking, if they land on you in spring or early summer, it's fine, but in late summer and around fall, that's when they can potentially be aggressive. More on that later. Now let's talk about the wings of a wasp, because they use those a lot to communicate. Most of the time they do this, they're alerting their cohorts or warning you that they're going to sting you if you get closer. While the behavior itself isn't necessarily aggressive, it warns that they will get aggressive if you push them. If you see them beating their wings as if they are a drum and you hear a drum-like sound, that's not just a warning, that's them preparing to attack. However, if you hear drumming like this without the wings incorporated, that's not aggressive, that's just them communicating with each other, generally being passive and ignoring you. General rule to remember: with wings, probably defensive or aggressive. Without wings, passive and just normal communication. Now, they have plenty of other behaviors to display different emotions or intentions, but those are in general the only ones you need to remember. But there's another very important factor when it comes to determining if a wasp is aggressive or not. That being the time of year, but not for the reason you think. You see, for most animals and even most insects, most aggression happens around the breeding season. But for wasps, it's very different and very unfortunate. As the year grows colder and resources grow scarce, wasps start to fight each other for who gets to stay in the hive over winter. This process involves the culling of the larvae and pupa that still haven't hatched, and even sometimes exiling their own queen from the hive. This leads to an end-of-the-year spike of wasps going solo and attacking anything and everything in their path in hopes of surviving. But once they're exiled, their fate is sealed, and their only real hope is to be as aggressive as possible to get whatever food is still left alive, even if that means recklessly challenging us in our own territory. But even with all of that considered, there is still yet another step you can take to make sure that wasps never attack you. Becoming their friend, or at least befriending the queen while she's making her nest. Believe it or not, wasps are intelligent and social enough to actually make bonds with humans. And while it can be done with workers and drones too, doing it with the queen ensures that the entire hive never attacks you. And while it might seem very scary, it's actually surprisingly simple. Just approach very slowly with your finger covered in some slight honey, watch their body language, and if she isn't aggressive and she starts eating it, she will teach the entire hive not to mess with you. It has been done and documented several times and is even somewhat of a trend on Japanese and Korean YouTube. In doing research for this video, I even found this guy who managed to tame a warrior wasp nest, the most aggressive species of paper wasp with venom comparable to that of a bullet ant, and he's just casually chilling with them. And if you don't believe the other examples I showed on screen, I've done it multiple times myself, in multiple different locations with multiple different species. To conclude this segment, which is already going on way longer than I originally anticipated, wasps are heavily misunderstood and intelligent animals. And even ignoring everything else I've said, they're staples of the environment that kill a lot of parasites, kill things like ticks, kissing beetles, and mosquitoes, and also control most of the populations of highly dangerous and invasive species. If you've got an infestation in your home or your garden or really anywhere nearby, an answer to that is probably a wasp. And heck, even if you're just antisocial, make friends with the wasps at your front door. They'll keep away anyone else and make sure that you're guarded and protected while in their territory. Anyway, it's time we finally move on to the fourth and final defendant of this video:
calling the final defendant to the stand, ticks, a part of the family Ixodida.
Now, the ticks are the hardest one to really defend. They spread disease, they suck our blood, they're highly predatory, and they basically only do that. There is really nothing else that they do. They don't pollinate, they don't really have much foundation in the ecosystems. Most of all that they do is take blood from other things and use it to feed themselves, and eventually create more of themselves to keep the process going, like a literal computer designed only to replicate more of itself. You might be wondering how I'm going to defend them if that is the case. In short, I'm not really going to do that.
At least not in the same way that I've defended the other bugs on this video.
I will say that yes, unfortunately, like everything else, they are somewhat, at least, vital to the environment. And the reason why is also the very reason why they annoy the crap out of us. They are necessary to the environment because of the vitamins that they steal from other animals, including us. There are several types of small animals, small birds, small mammals, lizards, and even other types of arthropods and insects that need the types of vitamins that we have in our blood, but they don't have the ability to really get it. Ticks suck blood, and blood is rich in iron and a lot of other nutrients. Most of the stuff that we get from our food, and even other types of things like sunlight, most of the vitamins are in there, so blood is very nutritiously valuable for invertebrates like ticks. So in a kind of sick and twisted fashion, if we were to remove the ticks, it wouldn't necessarily kill off a lot of populations, but it would certainly heighten the chance of basically every small animal becoming endangered in almost every type of environment.
That and they're really good ecosystem health indicators. They help with the biodiversity of microfauna, and originally I was going to say they were necessary for population control, but apparently that's been debunked. Go figure. So they quite literally just barely make the cut for what is necessary for the environment.
You can think of it in a morbidly positive way that, well, the blood that's been taken from me is hopefully going to be going to some other animal that I really like. Scientists debate this all the time, whether they are necessary for the environment, whether getting rid of them would be, prudent like we do with the screwworm flies, whether it would really affect anything realistically because they would likely be overtaken by another parasitic species. But a lot of studies that I have read have shown that very specific types of lizards, mammals, birds, insects, so many types of animals have their young depending on these ticks that have freshly fed in order for them to get the nutrients they need to not only survive, but grow and develop into adulthood. Much in the same vein I discussed before about the wasp species that are parasitoid, every stage of their life, every instar, actually specializes on a different animal, which means that the one that just fed on a sheep and metamorphosized into its final stage, which feeds on us, cannot feed on anything except for us. And in that case, it really just becomes a whole thing of, well, that's just the way nature works. It's not forgiving, it's not going to follow the moral code that humanity has, it's not going to be dictated by what we think and what we feel and what we'd like it to be. It just is. The sooner we learn to accept it and not let it bother us that much, the sooner we can move on with our own lives. Anywho, I'm gonna end this video right now. It is like 86 degrees in my room. I'm sweating like crazy and my skin is starting to itch and everything. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and hype the video and comment underneath if you want me to talk about anything more similar to this, because it really does help me out. I'm a small creator and I'm just trying to get my name out there so I can start doing more with myself. And thank you for watching. See you next time.